I'm Susannah Morgan. I'm the CEO at Oregon Food Bank. I use she, her pronouns. I identify as white, cisgender woman. I identify as an educated, middle-class person. My father was a professor. And I identify as a lesbian and as a member of the disability community through my two boys, both of whom are special needs. It's my pleasure today to talk to you about what the connection is between ending hunger and connection and connectivity and changing the world. And I see myself as a change maker, and I'm looking out at an audience of change makers. And this is so thrilling. I almost don't need my coffee, except that I'm about to take a sip. Okay, can you change the slide, please? This is one of my favorite quotes. For every complex problem, there's an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. Clear, simple, and wrong. Many of us humans think we know how things are connected, right? And we automatically go to the simple answer, and it's often not right. Next slide, please. Here's my not right. Food will not solve hunger. Food will not solve hunger. Let that sit with you for a moment. If you have not personally experienced hunger in the sense that you don't know where your next meal is coming from, this may not make sense to you. Because when you were hungry this morning, you went to the refrigerator and you got yourself some cottage cheese or whatever it is you had for breakfast, and your hunger was solved, thanks to what was in your refrigerator. But fundamentally, hunger is deeper than that. It's about access to food, right? So why is someone hungry again and again and again? And by someone, I mean most of us. 1 out of 2 Americans will be on SNAP at some point in their lives, will receive food stamps. 1 out of 2. And 60% of Americans will live at least 1 year in poverty. So if that is not your truth, if that has not happened to you yet, chances are it will. So I want you to listen to this as if it is happening to you and your family. Next slide, please. So if food won't solve hunger, what will? Well, the root cause of hunger is poverty, right? It's not having the money to put that cottage cheese or muesli or tarragon leaves, whatever it is, in the fridge, right? The root cause of hunger is poverty. When we get paid, we don't get a paycheck that says this much is for rent and this much is for your car and this much is for food. We get one paycheck and then it's our jobs to figure it out. And if that paycheck will not cover all of your living expenses, where's the place you squeeze? Food. It's harder to get help with rent. It's harder to get help with heat. It's very hard to get someone to help you fix your car for free. But you can eat less. Or you can ask for help for food, because we've now spent 40 years trying to make it easy and friendly and culturally appropriate for you to find food. So hunger is the canary in the coal mine for poverty. And most of us, when we are poor, we don't identify as poor, because that is not a good thing to be in our world, right? I recently heard a woman who was using SNAP and Section 8 housing refer to herself as not poor, but trying. Trying. Poverty itself has root causes. Next slide, please. And those are the systemic inequities. Racism, sexism, transphobia, xenophobia, ableism. It is not an accident that people of color are more likely to be hungry and poor. It is not an accident that our trans and gender diverse communities are more likely to be poor and hungry. It is not an accident that single moms are more likely to be poor and hungry. It's because we have designed systems that way. And by we, I mean all of us. We have allowed it, right? We are electing folks who maintain those systems. We are supporting ballot initiatives that maintain those systems, or we aren't. One or the other. We are or we aren't. It's just like with being anti-racist. You can either, a la Ibram Kendi, if you haven't read his book, go find it. You can either work on policies that dismantle racism, or you're supporting it. There's no neutral. And the same thing comes to poverty and all of the root causes of poverty. Next slide, please. So when we think about ending hunger, we say we have to end poverty. And we have to dismantle systemic inequities. So we'll do that in the next 20 minutes, right? We're on it. This is the group. We're all, right? We're going to do this. We usually, when I get to this side, there's an audience reaction of, oh, God, that sounds so big. But I actually find it hopeful. I find it hopeful because we made these systems, which means we can remake them, right? It's not a natural law like gravity. It was a choice somewhere along the line that our ancestors made. And are we going to fix it all at once? No. But we don't need to fix it all at once. We need to fix it as we can, time after time. We have to take the next step. As Dr. Martin Luther King said, you don't have to see the whole staircase to take the next step. So we have to take the next step into creating conditions so that my children and my grandchildren and my grandchildren's children, 7 generations from now, will not know hunger and poverty because we started that solution. Next slide, please. Oregon Food Bank's mission says this explicitly. Our job is to eliminate hunger and its root causes, and then it has a moral statement, because no one should be hungry. Because no one should be hungry. Yesterday I said, I'm trying to define my tribe, my group of people, as every human. And I challenge you to do that too. Next slide, please. We are currently experiencing the worst rates of hunger in a century. This is a picture from the 1930s, a bread line. My mother, who's 83, was not born when this picture was taken. So I doubt that very many folks in this room remember the bread lines of the Great Depression and the number of people who were out of work. But this is the level of hunger that we are experiencing right now. I'm going to give you some numbers. Next slide, please. So in 2019, casting your mind back, before the pandemic, 860,000 people asked for food assistance. 860,000 individual people, possibly including some of you in this room, went to a food pantry or a meal site or an after-school program or a senior center and asked for food. So this is not the universe of everybody who might be experiencing hunger. This is the group of people who is experiencing hunger and asked for help. 860,000, that was 1 in 5 before the pandemic. In 2020, that number rose like a tsunami to 1.7 million people. Now, I have just passed 26 and a half years in food banking, half of my life, and it has never been this high. In 2021, that number came down to 1.2 million, and it came down for 2 reasons. The first is that there was significant government support. It was individual paychecks, it was extra unemployment, it was extra SNAP that helped families stay afloat. And the second one is, in 2021, the businesses reopened and started hiring again, right? The economy started sparking again. This year, it's going back up. I don't know what that final number is going to be, but my 26-year professional gut says we may land somewhere around 1.5 million. And I bet Y'all can guess why it's going up. Anyone want to shout it out? Yes! Inflation. The costs of basic goods, food, gas, heating, impacts folks who have the least the most. Impacts folks who have the least the most. And once again, food is the canary in the coal mine. If you're worried about paying for gas or food, you'll buy gas and go to the food pantry. So that's why that number is going up. Did you know this? Did you know this was happening? Was this news to you? Yeah? In the first year of the pandemic, we kind of knew, right? There was a lot of stories about how bad hunger was. But it's kind of quieted down. And I just want you to sit with that for a moment. If so many of your neighbors are looking for food assistance and you didn't know, what else don't you know? What else do you need to know to stay connected and rooted in our communities? Next slide, please. Unsurprisingly, because the root cause of hunger is poverty, and the root cause of poverty is systemic inequities, hunger has fallen hardest on the communities that have long experienced disproportionate rates of hunger. Our communities of color, our immigrant, migrant, and refugee communities, our trans and gender diverse communities, and single moms and single caregivers. These 4 groups are what Oregon Food Bank calls our equity constituencies. And we aim our work at these equity constituencies. Our theory is that if we can solve hunger for these 4 groups, we will solve hunger for all of us. We will solve hunger for all of us. Next slide, please. So our work falls into 2 main categories. We work systemically to end hunger and its root causes, and we build community connections to help people access nutritious, affordable food today. And we build community power to eliminate hunger for good. Community connections and community power. And I think it's really important to see this as a both and, not an either or. We have to continue to provide food assistance to our neighbors today because we'd be lousy humans if we didn't. Right? Because when you see your neighbor, your friend, your son needing help, you help. That is what kind humans do, right? But we also have to build power for the long run because we don't want our grandchildren having to help their neighbors with food. We also have to solve the problem at the roots. And recently, I've been thinking about it this way. Next slide, please. That first work is about kindness. Kindness, how we can be individually kind, how we can create communities of kindness. But the second work, the systems change work, is about justice. Folks remember what Cornel West, the great Black academic, said about justice? Justice is what love looks like in public. These are both different forms of love. But one is the love that is the helping love, and the other form of love is the liberation love, creating communities where everybody is valued and everyone is in the tribe. Next slide, please. When we think about our kindness work, this is what it looks like. We support a network of 1,400 food assistance sites across Oregon and Clark County, Washington. They are served by 21 regional food banks and the statewide warehouse that is Oregon Food Bank. So it is this incredibly complex logistical organization, and I have a fleet of trucks, more than 20 trucks, that gets to every regional food bank every week. There are 240 staff at Oregon Food Bank that work in 5 locations. So this is a serious, significant operation that is promoting kindness, promoting access to food today. And could we do it better? Yes. We're still working on making sure the food is culturally appropriate, that it's in the right place at the right time, that when you show up asking for food, that you feel valued for exactly who you are. We've been doing that work for 10 years, and we will keep doing it, and keep getting better and better and friendlier. And no matter how good we get at this, we're never ending hunger, right? So that leads us to the next slide. And this wonderful quote from Anna LaPay. Yes, there's a crisis of hunger on the planet, but hunger is not caused by a scarcity of food, but by a scarcity of democracy. Next slide, please. So if you think about it, 1 in 4 Oregonians are currently experiencing hunger or are otherwise involved in food assistance as donors, as volunteers, throughout the food assistance world. I bet you, if I surveyed the room, some very large percentage of you have donated to Oregon Food Bank or a local food drive at some point in your lives, right? So I'm talking about you here when I'm talking about this group of folks. 1 in 4. That sounds like power to me. That sounds like a political force. That sounds like a group of people that if we could put our shoulder to the same wheel, could actually change the world. So together we can change the policies that sustain hunger, and we are. Next slide, please. So in the past 7 years, Oregon Food Bank and a coalition of many, many other organizations, depending on what we were working on, and including many of you, I'm particularly thinking of you, New Seasons, have helped us do this work. So we worked on expanding and implementing a new higher minimum wage. I think that was 2015, Karen, does that sound right? Ish. We have expanded free school meals dramatically. This happened right before the pandemic, in which most kids in Oregon would have access to school meals at some much reduced price. We aren't at universal yet, but we made a huge step forward. We've made historic investments in affordable housing at the Portland level, at the metro level, and at the state level. Is it enough? No. But is it a start? Yes. And in one of my particular favorite things that I've done in 26 years of food banking, in the short legislative session this last year, we, the coalition of folks who are working on this, won overtime for farm workers. Now, if you aren't geeky about this like I am, you may not know that the Fair Labor Standards Act, way back in 1936, when those bread lines were happening, specifically excluded farm workers and domestic workers from overtime laws. Why? Because at that time, most of those people doing those jobs were black, and they needed the Southern vote in order to get that passed. So it was explicitly racist, 1936. This fixed part of it, fixed part of that. It took us 80 years, but we did it. Yes, thank you. As you know, most of our farm workers at this time are Latinx, Latina folks, not exclusively, but the large majority are. So it's a different kind of racism and xenophobia that has been playing out in the last couple decades, but is still there. These are things that we have done together and collectively. And I bet that not all of you in this room agree with all of these things, and that is okay. That is okay. We are not going to agree on everything when we're talking about systems change. I'm going to say that again. We are not going to agree about everything when we're talking about systems change, because systems are complicated, and I will see this portion and you will see that portion, right? What is important is that we don't let those differences turn into broken relationships, that we maintain relationship across difference. and that we can say, okay, Oregon Food Bank, I'm with you on that one and not on that one, and that is cool. We have made different coalitions to get each of these 4 things done, and we will keep doing that. There will be things that you are passionate about and things that are more problematic, and that is fine. What I really want you to be thinking about is how can you be part of that movement? Next slide, please. So at Oregon Food Bank, our vision is to create resilient communities throughout Oregon and South Washington that never go hungry. That the food assistance sites are not needed because hunger isn't happening. Next slide, please. Here's how you can help. Okay, obviously you can donate funds. You folks are a bunch of business folks, and some of you are very small and just getting started, and that's not an opportunity for you. That's cool too. But it's always an opportunity to donate funds. And if you were interested in particularly donating in a certain kind of way, we can help you like that, like checkout or little fundraisers with your organization. Because frankly, we can do more money with you. We can do more with your money than you can if you're interested in food. We get food by the truckload. Would you like to know how much a truckload of peanut butter costs? The answer is $42,000 right now. It was $35,000 in 2019. You can bring your teams in to volunteer. This is a great team building activity, but it also is a great awakening activity. In our volunteer shifts, we always talk about our systems change work. And so it's an opportunity for us to share our vision of creating these communities that never go hungry and share how we think people can best plug into that right now. And we always give people the opportunity to sign up for our advocacy alert list, in which people will then stay on a regular email list and hear what we're working about. And then they can choose, do I want to weigh in on this issue or not, right? You're just staying in touch on what's happening. You as businesses can amplify us. You can retweet, repost, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can make sure that our word is getting out there larger and stronger. Nike has in the past taken our language and put it on their intranet, for instance, for the however many thousands, 50,000 people they have inside their organization. And most of all, my biggest ask is that you connect to this work, that you figure out what structures you and your organization want to be working on, and then dig into that. I know that this organization of B Corps will be working on advocacy issues. I know Better Business Portland works on advocacy issues. Oregon Food Bank works on advocacy issues. There are plenty of places for you to find your people for those kinds of things. It's easy to not to, right? On your daily life, it's easy to say, that's not the top of my to-do list. And it takes a long time. 1936 to 2022 to change the Fair Labor Standards Act. It takes a long time. But if we don't do it now, it will never happen. So please add it to your list. Add it to your list. One more slide, please. And then maybe you'll join us, and we'll see you in this picture. And last slide, please. And you can connect to me. That's my email. You can connect to me on LinkedIn. We can go have a cup of coffee. I have a crew of colleagues who will come out and work with organizations if you'd like someone to come in and speak for your team. We would love to be in community with you, in community with this group of change makers, changing the world together. Thank you so much.